And it's tough. So the real quick TLDR is that Hi-Rez is going through a fairly large amount of layoffs right now. Nothing, not like a person got fired, like kind of departments are getting laid off. So this is all going to be stemming from a tweet this morning from Stu. So we're going to kind of talk about it, go into it, what it means, what it doesn't mean, etc. The big right off the bat takeaway is that a whole lot of employees that have been working at Hi-Rez, some of them for a very long time, we're talking like 10-year employees, have been laid off for really no other reason than Hi-Rez is in trouble and the leadership has made poor decisions for several years in a row that has led to this moment, and we did not need to be here. So with that little preamble, let us get into the tweet. Today, we're making some difficult but necessary changes to ensure Hi-Rez's long-term success with a specific focus on positioning Smite 2 for a long and sustainable future. That is corporate speak for we are laying some of you guys off because we made poor decisions and we do not have as much money as we thought we were going to have because we thought that we were making good decisions when we made bad decisions. As part of this internal reorganization and reprioritization, we are laying off some team members across Hi-Rez. This will disproportionately impact those in marketing and publishing roles, as well as some of our Evil Mojo, G&A, and Titan Forge divisions. The game roles impacted disproportionately, affecting our team working on cosmetic, skin, content, and system features. So this is basically saying if you're not a core feature worker on basically Smite 2, you were in a lot of trouble. So if you were working on anything but Smite 2, you were in a very problematic position. And even if you were working on Smite 2, you might have gotten the axe depending on if you were working on like a core gameplay feature. So not a great start. This news has a real human impact at a tough time for workers in the industry. Each impacted individual is a talented and dedicated professional who has poured their heart and soul into our games. Letting them go is a heartbreaking decision, reflects a failure in my leadership, and for one, I take personal accountability. These are all good people who have contributed positively to the company, and no one should view this as a personal failure. I extend my deepest thanks to them for the contributions to the company and their role in helping entertain and bring joy to millions of players. Okay, so this paragraph doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of like Smite. Like there's not like a lot of information there, but to be clear, saying I take accountability and it reflects a failure in my leadership and then firing many, many people while you maintain your position at the top of the company means nothing. It is an absolutely nothing statement. You can save up to 15% or more on car insurance by switching to Geico. It means absolutely nothing. If, I screwed up, so you guys all lose your job, but I still maintain my job and will continue onward collecting my salary, it doesn't mean anything. That paragraph might as well say, suck my dick, because there's no difference. So you can say you're sorry all you want, and I take responsibility. But if everybody else is suffering the repercussions of your actions and you are not, then you're not taking accountability. That's not how that works, okay? Next paragraph. It's a fun day for Smite, Kappa. This move follows a comprehensive review of our strategy and operations. In the game division, we have decided to concentrate our efforts entirely on Smite 2. We basically knew that this was already happening. This is just them basically reaffirming that position. Outside of small teams supporting light updates for Paladins in Smite 1, within Smite 2, we are almost exclusively prioritizing gameplay development in the near term, such as new modes and gods. New modes, I think, is personally problematic at this point in the stage of the game because there's a whopping 800 people playing right now. So if you add a new mode and split up people between more queues, you're going to start literally not getting queue pops. As well as quality improvements over some cosmetic and monetization features previously planned in the run-up to the game's free-to-play launch next year. So there's a lot in this paragraph. Like I said, we already knew that they had basically shifted everybody over to Smite 2. We knew that that was already happening. It's been very clear in the developmental process of other games at Hi-Rez that people were getting either shifted over to Smite 2 or laid off. This is basically a reconfirmation that Smite 1 is on the back burner. Paladins has been on the back burner for a while. And if you're not Paladins or Smite 1, none of their other games even essentially exist at this point. So to the Realm Royale, Rogue Company, DKO, whatever other dumb games that they made that got 60 players, none of those I probably even have anybody working on them at this point. And to be fair, I think those 3 games combined probably have like 400 players tops. So Paladins and Smite 1 both have a okay player base. Paladins is at an all-time low. Smite 1 is at an all-time low. Smite 1 right now getting about 5,000 average players on Steam. Last I checked for Paladins, it was like half that. It was like 2,500 or something, 2,000. So not good. And their Paladins is almost assuredly not making money at this point. And Smite 1, we knew was already basically losing money, and there's so many less people playing it now, which means it's extra not making money, which means that they're obviously full tilt going in on Smite 2, and obviously the layoffs are because they're not making any money. Real quick, though, I want to go back and talk about this internal reorganization and reprioritization. I've seen a lot of stuff on Reddit. Reddit loves their hot takes and they're often wrong. A lot of people are talking about how post-COVID, a lot of tech companies have gone through layoffs and this kind of thing. And that is absolutely true. The part that isn't true is that Hi-Rez already went through those rounds of layoffs. That already happened like a year or two ago when Hi-Rez downsized their studio size by like 60%. And you can go find articles in it in like local Georgia papers and stuff. They had already gone through that round of layoffs and they had already cut Hi-Rez like massively down. This is entirely separate from just post-COVID correction. The post-COVID correction has already happened at Hi-Rez. This is a post-terrible decision-making correction. So just to be clear, this has nothing to do with COVID at this point. That had already happened. Those layoffs had already happened. They had already downsized comparably. This is a failure in leadership to make good decisions regarding the time release of Smite 2 in the development of Smite 1 in terms of Smite 2's release. Moving forward. Notably, the core dev team currently working on Smite 2 after these changes is still a significant size. Larger than the Smite 1 team was throughout most of its life cycle, outside of a period during and shortly after the pandemic, aka what we just mentioned. They've already done the pandemic layoffs. This is separate. The team working on gods and gameplay features versus skins and monetization progression system features is larger than Smite 1 teams has ever been for such feature. So basically, they're saying, if you don't factor in all of these employees that we normally have, we actually have more employees working on the game than usual. This is once again a nothing statement. This is kind of like when you read inflation numbers and they're like, but we took out gas and energy and food prices. And you're like, oh, so then it literally doesn't mean anything because that's what I spend most of my money on. Same concept. We have the most people working on the game as long as you don't factor in all the people that used to be working on the game. This also comes with, I think, really big secondary problems that people are not considering. Step one is progression and system features sounds pretty damn important to me. I know that people want to have a knee-jerk reaction and be like, LOL, the skin team got laid off. That's not important right now anyway. But, I mean, to be clear, those are real human people with real jobs supporting real families that got screwed because of bad decision making. So, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Step 2, progression features and system features, I would argue, are quite core features to a game that make you want to play it in the development of that game. And also, to be clear, I do think that the lack of monetization is a problem. And the reason why it's a problem is not that it's going to be a problem this instant, right? The problem with Smite 2 in the exact moment isn't that you can't spend a lot of money on it, right? Because the game isn't in a stage where you should be spending a lot of money on it. The problem is if there is so much less income coming in from Smite 1, coming in from Paladins, coming in from whatever, right? That they have to lay off employees in order to focus on the core team to develop the game. I bet you my bottom dollar against your bottom dollar that Smite 2 is going to release into a free-to-play state too early before the game is ready because they need to start making money as soon as possible. I am 100% confident that Smite 2 is going to release into its free-to-play beta stage too early, just like it released into its free-to-play alpha stage too early. I am beyond confident in that, and a part of that is because they're going to be losing continually, bleeding so much money as a company that they're going to have to, at some point, basically do the investor thing, which is, doesn't matter whether the game is ready or not, it's launching because we are out of funds. I guarantee you that that is the case. Next paragraph. Our goal for Smite 2 in the near future is to create the best possible gaming experience for our community and a game that provides joys to players and can sustain itself long into the 2030s. As we've gained experience through the alpha, the process of migrating gods from Smite 1 to Smite 2 is now clearer, and we better understand what players want from the game. We're doubling down on ensuring this transition meets player expectations and moves faster, taking into account the lessons we have learned in the early alpha. What that means to me is they're going to be trying to get out more gods faster. So I would expect to see more than 2 gods every 3 weeks on average. Maybe they can push it to 3 gods every 3 weeks. I don't know exactly how much faster they can make the process, but this indicates to me that they're going to get more gods in the game faster, that kind of stuff. Great in theory. More content is certainly better than less content. But I think it's very fair to say that the content that they have been putting out at the rate that they have been putting out has been so buggy and so broken that them picking up the pace to release faster, can't imagine the content is going to release out smoother. We had several bugs in the last patch that weren't just like, oh, okay, X god is doing 10% more damage than they're supposed to, or, oh, here's a silly item bug. We're talking like, congratulations, your account is locked out of playing Smite for a day because of a bug and the server doesn't shut down. Or you can't get into a queue at all. Like, we're talking you cannot play the game bugs, which are not acceptable. Alpha bugs, people expect them. A bug that prevents you from literally playing the game? Not acceptable at any stage of development where the game is in a publicly playable state that you paid to play. Finally, while these changes are difficult, we believe they are necessary and we will emerge stronger from them. We appreciate your continued support and understanding during this challenging period, and the support and thanks you give to the employees who are impacted have given so much of their passion and time to help entertain us all. Thank you for standing by us as we build the future of Hi-Rez and Smite 2. So that is the end. That is the end of that tweet. So obviously a lot of problems with that tweet from the top down. And regarding the future of Smite, is very concerning. Very, very concerning, because the problems mentioned that led to the layoffs are not problems that are going to fix themselves overnight, right? Smite 2 was not in a position where, okay, we know what the problem is now, we can fix it in the next patch. We're talking, the game needs, I keep saying this, like 9 months of development time in order to get to what I would consider an acceptable standard of gameplay that gamers are looking for in 2024, and it'll be 2025 by the time that it came out. Just got a tweet from FineOK that says, "This effing sucks. Feel bad for those laid off. One of the problems with just waiting for the alpha to improve, how are you making dollars to pay the people improving it? The devs are working so hard to make a good game that can be replayable in the near future. It just isn't there yet. I hate the constant doomerism because I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy to some extent, but on the other hand, it's hard to want to stay on ship when there's constant holes leaking water. I don't know, so much to say." Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. The reason why we're in this position where there have to be layoffs is because of player base regarding particularly Smite 1, but also Smite 2. If Smite 2 would have had a really solid player base, then the monetization systems would have been put in the game because it would have been able to make money. The reason why all these people are getting laid off, to be frank, is because of this. There's a whopping 800 people playing Smite 2 right now, and the 24-hour peak is 1,800 players. The reason why they're laying off all these people and getting rid of all these monetization skin folks, art folks, etc., is because Smite 2 was making $0, and so they basically had no incentive to keep these people around because they were paying them and there was no money being spent at Smite 2. So that's the reason why it happened. Like, there's nobody playing Smite 2, which is the base of the problem. And to be fair, it is none of those folks that got laid off. It is none of their problems that Smite 2 is in the position that it is. To be clear, the problem is literally terrible executive decision making. And the real moneymaker for Smite, and this is the one that's really, really, really going to hurt your feelings. I'm going to zoom in on this really, really far so you guys can experience this in live time, okay? Here is the really, really tough one. So this is the Smite 1 Steam numbers, right? These are your Smite 1 Steam numbers. In January of 2024, so the start of this year, 12,500 players, classic new season, big boost. Smite 2 gets announced. So much hype, right? So much hype. Now, Smite 1 has been the moneymaker for Hi-Rez for forever. Every game that you've ever seen made from Hi-Rez, Smite 1 has paid for, with basically the exception of Paladins, which essentially became a self-sustaining ecosystem for many years, even though at this point the game is basically dead, but it basically paid for itself. So if we look at these player numbers throughout this year, okay? Classic fall off, right? Every new season, bunch of players come back and then they stop playing the game. Super standard. Minus 1,600 players in May. We're starting to get into like Smite 2 alphas territory, right? We're talking about the people that were playing for like the quick pop-up weekends. Minus 1,000 players, June of 2024. July, minus another 400 players, down to 7K average. August, 7,084, stays the same. Now, this is where things get crazy. This is where Smite 2 launches. Are you ready? Are you ready? 5,000 average players, minus 2,000 average players immediately. And not only that, the icing on the cake, from 12,700 peak players to 8,800 peak players. So the game that keeps Hi-Rez afloat has essentially lost like 40% numbers at peak players Just in average players, we're talking somewhere around 30% drop off just in the last month. Just in the last month. Now, approximately 2,000 players peak have gone to play Smite 2. But here's why even those numbers really suck. So these players, like, even if we assume, okay, I mean, this is average, so it's actually way worse. But even if we assume, all right, all of these 2,000 players are playing Smite 2 now, right? That's still 2,000 players playing a game that essentially has no monetization, which means that still counts just as bad as if they weren't playing a Hi-Rez game at all, right? So our 24-hour peak for Smite 1 is 6,600 players. If we add that to the peak players of Smite 2, which is under 2,000, we're looking at like 8,500 players peak between both games. Down from, I mean, we had 24,000 peak players at the start. So if you take the peak players from Smite 1 at the start of the new season to the peak players now, you're looking at basically a 70% player drop-off, and that's still kind of being a little bit generous. So those player numbers are the reason why Smite is in its current predicament, because if your games don't make any money, then you don't have any money to pay your employees. So that begs the question, basically, where is Hi-Rez getting the money from? Because there's no way in hell that Smite is sustaining the company. It isn't. 0% chance. The amount of people spending money on Smite right now is definitely at an all-time low. The amount of players is at an all-time low. And while we don't know this for 100%, I would say 90% chance what's keeping Hi-Rez afloat right now is probably funding from E-Rez. E-Rez had come back into the scene a while ago. I've got a strong feeling he was behind a big push for Smite 2, which means presumably E-Rez, the original founder of Hi-Rez, is almost guaranteed funding out of his pocket the differential in money that they were making compared to the money that they need to keep employees, and also is probably the reason why all of these people are genuinely getting laid off, because he probably said, I'm not paying for all of these people if we're not monetizing the game yet. So that's fun. So basically, poor decision-making from the top down has, of course, screwed over the people that were just the regular employees. Smite is in a very, very, very tough spot right now, and there's no reason to pretend like it isn't. I think that if Smite releases maybe June, I think maybe Smite 2 could be ready for like a June free-to-play at this rate. Somewhere around there, I think would probably be an acceptable release date development schedule. And if I was a betting man, I would bet that they release the game free-to-play to start trying to make money around April, maybe early April. So approximately probably 3 months before it would be ready. So I can see them releasing the game in about 4 to 5 months from now, when it probably needs closer to, 7 to 9 months of development, which is concerning. I hope that's not true. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that they take the development time that they need. I hope that they continue to get the funding that they need in order to make the game as good as it can be. I still personally enjoy Smite 2. I think that it's a fun game. I have a good time playing it, even though it is, I think, objectively not in a gameplay ready state. I wish they would have, waited another 6 months before we got to see the game for the first time. But that is not where we get to be right now. Can't change the past, only can look forward to the future. So, I do hope that the people that got screwed over by this, quickly get to land on their feet. I do hope that there gets to be a reworking of decision-making from the top at Hi-Rez. I think they need it. I think there needs to be a large shift in leadership. But I don't think that a large shift in leadership is probably possible, because at the end of the day, without E-Rez there funding the game, there probably is no game. So if you do anything crazy at the top of the leaderboard, so to speak, the whole thing probably just comes crashing down, because there is simply no world where they can sustain development on Smite 2 without outside investments, which means you're basically at the whim of the outside investor in order to make sure that the game development continues. So Smite 2 is in between a rock and a hard place. Doesn't mean that it can't come out of it. Doesn't mean that it can't be successful. Doesn't mean that it can't find its footing 6 months from now and find a nice, healthy place, solidifying itself as probably the 4th biggest MOBA. And by probably, I mean that is best case scenario. There's no world where Smite 2 is a top 3 MOBA. It clearly has lost that top 3 spot, and so it'll be battling out for number 4. And so the question that we basically have to ask ourselves is there room in 2024, 2025 for 4 MOBAs? And that is basically the question we have to ask ourselves. This is more of a philosophical question, but is there room for there to be 4 MOBAs in the world that are successful at the same time? Obviously, League of Legends will always be number 1. And then you'll have Deadlock, probably, honestly, number 2 eventually. Right now it's Dota, and then Deadlock. And then 4th place, hopefully, can be Smite 2. But if it can't, then that sucks. But if it can't, then that sucks. But that's kind of where we're at right now is, pressing forward, continuing development, and hopefully there's some wiggle room for Smite to actually find a footing. And that's kind of the talk. So it's not a happy talk, but it's a talk that needed to happen. Thank you for supporting the Twitchiest community. If you'd like to see more videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel and always hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. Thank you for all your support, and have a Twitchin' day, y'all.